Hey guys, I'm the 50s kid. This is my E46 BMW, and apparently I haven't replaced absolutely everything yet because it's time to replace the power steering rack because it's leaking. And I thought about maybe rebuilding it. You know, I saw like a rebuild kit on, I think, FCP Euro or one of those BMW part sites. And you know, it just comes with all the seals, the O-rings, and all that stuff. I thought about doing that, but there's a little bit of play in this power steering rack, just like a very small amount. And, you know, I just think that that's just, you know, it's old, it's play between the gears and whatnot, and it's just better to replace it. It's better economy to replace it. So I bought a new rack. I also bought a new high pressure line because those start to weep over time. Mine is definitely sort of weeping, you know, leaking just a little bit, just seeping through the rubber there. So replace that too. We're gonna do it all in this video, so let's get started. So I had this thing jacked up earlier in the week so I could take a look, figure out exactly what the problem is. I was honestly expecting the upper line to be leaking because I actually had to take that loose in order to, back when I converted my manual back to automatic, in order to get these ATF cooler lines back in there. So I figured maybe I just didn't tighten it enough and that's where it was leaking from. But no, that is actually fine. And then I noticed it was weeping from the ends of the boots right here. So I just proceeded to sort of remove the boot to have a look. And I'm going to do that now and show you what I found. And that's what I found. Things just full of ATF. Of course, I've been adding ATF to my power steering reservoir for quite a while. You know, it's just been disappearing, but there haven't been any puddles underneath the car, and that's why everything was trapped inside of that boot, amazingly. So it's definitely like that on the other side. I've got weeping on the other side too. So both sides, the oil seals on both sides went out. So that's it. That's what's wrong with this thing, and that's why it's time for a new one. Now I needed to get these boots off anyway because the new one doesn't come with them. So that was all right what I just did. Gonna take the other side loose as well. And this side doesn't have a clamp on it. It just kind of, you know, there's a little boss and it'll pull out. What we're gonna do is we're gonna get the lock nut loose right here and do that again on the other side. Thankfully, I'm pretty certain we're not gonna need to lower the subframe in order to get this thing out of here because it looks like we have room right in front. We might need to remove the ATF cooler line bracket, and we might actually need to get the high pressure line off first. We might not need to. Maybe if we just kind of take it loose at the pump here, you know, you just have to have this little bit of room to come forward. You got to remove these two bolts right here, and that's all that's holding the power steering rack to the subframe right here. So if we remove these two bolts, this thing should sort of come forward. We got these lines here which are attached to the rack itself, so those just need to clear the subframe right here. There should be enough room to sort of get this thing out of here without needing to do too much. But of course this line is bolted to the side of it. There's a bracket right there, so we'll take that loose. And we'll definitely need to, of course, take the pressure or the fluid lines loose from it. That's kind of it. We're of course going to need to take the tie rods off, so we're probably definitely going to start with that. You know, I misspoke. I'm definitely going to start with getting this lock nut loose first because you want to do that while the end of the tie rod is still braced. So that's a 22. Oh, wrong way, huh? Okay. Yeah, see, mine's pretty loose because I actually changed these tie rods a couple years ago. So yeah, not too much of a problem. Over here, this is a 19 mil. If you haven't replaced your tie rods yet, absolutely a great time to replace them. You know, mine are tight. I can't move them at all by hand here, so they're still pretty good. Now to get this ball joint loose, you can go ahead and hit this with a hammer. You basically want to hit what the ball joint goes through. Hit it a bunch of times with a heavy hammer and that'll pop the ball joint loose. Or you can use a little ball joint press, well, not a ball joint press, a tie rod and puller tool. Let me show you what it looks like. Looks like this. I got this one at Harbor Freight. It's worked great for me. I've popped a lot of ball joints loose with this one, and it hasn't let me down, oddly enough. And this thing has stretched quite a bit in some cases. So this is actually a good Chinesium part that they make. Now, keep your fingers free from this thing. When it goes, it pops pretty violently, or it can. A friend of mine hurt himself on one of these. Just like that. So I'm only going to show you one side because the other side is absolutely identical. Now that we have the tie rod loose, we're just going to spin it off, and I'm just going to count the turns. That way when I put it on the new rack, it'll just sort of be close enough, and then I'll just do some final adjustments by eye. Once I have the tire on, I'll just kind of, you know, just eyeball it and make sure that the tire's straight so we can get down the road. Yeah, we actually need to unscrew the tie rod all the way, because again, the new rack doesn't come with the tie rod end here. It only comes with this part of the rod, so we got to take this off and transfer it to the new one. We're going to transfer our boot and all of that. So when we take this off, I'm going to count the turns. It's just a little trick you do whenever you're changing tie rod ends. You know, you just count the turns. That gets you close, really, really close, and then you can sort of fine-tune the adjustment. Once the tire's back on, you can just kind of eyeball the tire. You know, is it straight? Is it sticking out a little bit? You just make it like straight by eye, and that'll get you straight enough to go down the road and get a, you know, go to the alignment shop. But you absolutely need to get an alignment when you do something like this. So anyway, we're just going to count the turns. 1, 2, 3, 18 and a half. So 18 and a half will get us pretty close. Get our boot off. It just pops over, and I had I put it back over the racks so it would stop leaking. And there we are. So we'll just do that to the other side, then we'll unbolt the rack, we'll unbolt the lines, we'll see what all we need to unbolt to get this thing out of here. So it turns out these bolts right here, there are nuts on the top of them, so we're going to need to grab those with a wrench. We're going to need to be able to slip a wrench up under there, so we kind of have to get this pressure line out of here at least. Anyway, so it's a good thing I'm changing it, but you know, even if I wasn't changing it, we'd have to remove it. We'd have to, of course, remove it from up here. So here and here, we're going to unbolt those. One of them should be 19, I believe, and the other one is probably 22. Oh, this is a 21. I might be wrong about that 22. This one's definitely a 19. We don't need to remove that top one. Actually, we do, of course. Let's just do that now. Okay. We'll get that guy draining. There's going to be a washer here on the, you know, between, there's going to be a washer on either side of this little banjo fitting. So it might be stuck to the rack, and it is. It might fall off and fall in your oil pan. Just be aware of it. These are aluminum washers, so they are reusable, maybe once or twice. Or you can just buy new ones, buy replacements, whatever your preference. Now, is that lower one a 22? It is. But it's in sort of an awkward spot for my wrench. It might be. You know, we don't really have a lot of swing, so I think I'm going to grab a socket. So that's the one we're going to be replacing. Let's see, yeah, this washer is not absolutely stuck. to the rack, so we want to grab that off, put it with the bolts. Same thing for here, yeah. This line we can just sort of tuck up out of the way once it's finished stripping. So I'm going to let this line finish draining. That way I can move my pan and I can take it off from the power steering pump, which is going to be up here, right here. And I'll get you a little better shot of it in a sec. First, let me go ahead and pull this off. Pull this bracket off the rack. It's just a 10. So this bolt is a 17. Probably should be using a line wrench. One thing about line wrenches is they're not very long. I prefer wrenches with leverage. You'd think this thing would be loose enough by now. Yeah, here we go. Can at least get it by hand. This is doing nothing for my carpal tunnel. Okay. And that's that line out of there. Okay, now it is time to get the rack out of here. It is, the nuts on top are 16 mil, and we're gonna have to snake over like this to get at them. And then, strangely enough, on the bottom, it's 15 mil, which is strange for a BMW. Yeah, there we go. So the last thing we need to remove is the steering coupling. This is the steering coupling right here. Now, if you've never replaced this, good time to replace it. What we're gonna do is just remove this bolt, because that's really the most easily accessible bolt. That way I don't have to turn the rack or anything. So that should be an E10. It's an external Torx. So you're gonna need an E10 to get on that bolt. That's what it looks like, inverted Torx. Let me get that loosened first. Yeah, probably should have done this before I took the rack loose. But that's all right, we'll make it work. Thing's leaking more and more. So if you're replacing this, there's another bolt down here, but you know, we'll be able to get at that once we have the rack out as well. So this is all we need to do. We should be able to get this off the rack at this point, or off the steering column at this point. Now I had previously, I've got the key in the ignition so that it can turn side to side, but I think I don't want to do that actually. I'm gonna make sure it's locked up. That way, you know, it doesn't turn, and I can just, because I anticipate we're gonna need to sort of pull on this a little bit. I don't want it to turn at all. So at this point, all we should need to do is pull this thing out. Yeah, that is all we needed to do. Let's turn this over, get all the oil out of it, and put the new one back in. So here is the new rack, and I was mistaken. It does come with boots, which is really nice. It's one less thing we got to do. I've got the rack lined up here and here, okay? And what's obvious to me is that it's the tie rods are not exactly aligned as they were. This one's too far in here, this one's too far out here, so the rack needs to be turned. It doesn't come with this black plastic thing. So what I'm gonna do is remove this bolt. This is another E10, and get that steering coupler off. We'll get this little black thing off. I don't suppose it really matters, you know, so if you break it or can't get it off or whatever, you know, it doesn't really matter. But I'm gonna try to put it on anyway. And then I'll just, I'll be able to grab onto that and spin the rack and kind of get it aligned properly. So that's what I'm gonna do. So if you don't have an impact gun, you might make it easier on yourself if you get this bolt loose while the steering rack is still in the car, while it's still bolted on. Just, you know, get both of the bolts loose, and you know, you can just take the coupler off while it's in the car or whatever you want to do, but as long as the bolts are loose, you know, that'll help you. Because if you're kind of wrenching on this with a ratchet, you're probably going to tend to move this a little bit. So I might need the use of a prying device. You know, I was thinking I can get that pry bar in there, but no, that's where the little black plastic thing is. It certainly might be easier to kind of get this off while the rack is still in the car. You just have the ability to sort of knock it around. Let's see, I think I'm going to grab a hammer, see if I can just knock on this thing and knock it off. That is working. If I just wasn't lazy and I went to the vise, this would be a little easier. Yes, I am causing damage to the aluminum. No, I don't really care. Do we have enough to sort of spread that open at this point? No, not really. Let's keep going. I want to be even with this. Okay. Okay, so I want to spread this out a little. Just make it a little easier to get on. Maybe I'll just stick the screwdriver in it and give it a tap. Little love tap, spread it open just a tad. Yeah, very nice. And then I'll probably do the same thing for the other side. Just a little bit. So yeah, I don't really care about my little marks I made. That's not gonna hurt it. It's gonna be just fine. So now this black thing, I don't think is super necessary. I mean, it just kind of helps you align things, but it's not critical. And I'm wondering, I've had one of these off before on the X5, or try to get one of these off. They're difficult. It's likely that it will break. I think it just kind of depends on the one, you know, the condition of the plastic and such. I do not remember how I did it. You know, I'm just thinking I'm hitting up under where this long axis is, where this thing sticks up, because that might be the strongest point. So if I just kind of get my screwdriver up under that, maybe tap it a little. Yeah, see, that's working nicely. Okay. It looks like this little black part here is already broke up. You guys can see that. This little black part here, that was broke. That wasn't gonna come off. I wonder if there is a part number for this thing. Might be good to grab that part number. Okay, so that's off. Now, I think what I'm going to do, rather than what I said before, I think I'm going to try to turn the old rack first before I put that black thing on. I'm going to do it with this, because this is splined to fit on these splines, so it'll actually grab it, right? Okay. Now we're going to adjust the rack so that it's where it needs to be. Yeah, just like that. Not a big deal. All right, so I've got it adjusted where I want it to be, and I'm gonna put this thing on kind of where I think it was aligned before. See if we can tap it on by the collar here. carefully. Okay, so it looks like we can't even get that little top black thing on anyway, because this part doesn't stick out high enough. Anyway, so yeah, cool. And we'll just stick this guy back on. See, that's all it is just sort of like an alignment tool for when you're taking this off, when the rack's still in the car. That way you just kind of know the position that it wants to be in. So I'm going to put that in, tap it on. It's probably not the best way to go about that because of the rubber. Let's see, what is the best way? What do we want to do? We might want to spread this a little more, actually, just so it slips right on, you know? Okay, feels pretty good. Let me get some lube on that. Little PB blaster. It's just what was handy. Don't let too much oil soak into rubber things, though. Yeah, okay, that's pretty good. Maybe, yeah, that's all we needed. So we should have this down far enough. Oh, I think this is a little too far down. Or wait, not far enough, actually. Yeah, so I was making some off-camera adjustments just now. I needed to. This part of the collar that's indented here, that's where this bolt goes through. So you got to get this thing aligned just right. And where it's seated, the black plastic was a little too low. So, you know, the bolt couldn't quite go through. And then I kind of pushed up a little bit and it was a little too high. So I had to kind of push it back down just a little. And, you know, I ended up cracking the plastic right there with the screwdriver because I hit on the wrong part. But, you know, now I've kind of got things adjusted. I had to push the plastic down and push the coupling back up and just kind of get it right in the right spot. Now I believe I have it, and now I can just put this back together. Yeah. So there we go. That's it. I'm lining up the bolt holes right here, one rack to another, because that's how it's going to be centered, right? I'm just eyeballing it. You know, and even if you get the threads, even if you get it, you know, 1/4 of an inch out, not going to matter. You just adjust the tie rods. You know, you'll have that much adjustment, and yeah, should be fine. So now we can put this thing in the car. I'm going to pull off these caps before we do that. These are screws. Screw in probably. Yeah, of course, because it's threaded. All right, let's just get this guy back in. Now, when we put this in here, I want to make sure that I'm getting the steering column sort of up into place on that bushing, on that coupling first. So problems with getting an aftermarket rack is that the lines that go on the outside are hitting up against the steering rack a little bit, which is an issue. Let's see. What do I want to do about that? It's just the way they bent those lines. They're just kind of, they are interfering. Frickin' aftermarket stuff. I guess that's a good reason not to go aftermarket with this, but you know what? An OEM rack is just really expensive. So I think what I might do, I'm going to pull this back out. I'm going to see if I can push these lines by hand, bend them in a little. And if that's not possible, then I will transfer the lines from the old rack, because those are probably going to be bent a little bit better. So yeah, let me pull that out. So it turns out the ends of these lines are not quite the same, they have O-rings on them, which is strange. I really thought they'd be flare fittings, but they're not. Different size holes on the ends, different size O-rings, and the biggest problem is here on the end of this line. Let's see how we can see this. That's the problem right there, is that this line, which is the new one, sticks out a little too far. So it kind of sticks out like that, and it's hitting up against the back of the subframe there. So that's an issue, and I don't think I'm going to be able to bend that. I don't have like a tubing bender or anything. So that's kind of a challenge. So yeah, that's the essence of the problem right there. This bend is just too high. And I don't think there's anything I can really do about it. I thought perhaps bending it down right here at this point, just pushing that down and in. But I really don't think that this bend is going to get any better. I think it's still going to be curved up a little too high right here. I think this basically represents where we have to be. So I think that means that this rack is unusable. Pretty surprising. So I think I'm going to have to send this back to the eBay seller. You know, you sold me a bill of goods. I think I'm going to have to get a rack from my local parts house. I hope they can get it for me tomorrow. They're open from like 9 to 1 tomorrow. But I like them. They have good prices. Their price is going to be about $100 more than what I paid for this. I paid like $240 for this. But that's all right. You know, it's better than like $600 or $700 for the OEM one. So hopefully that one is going to be a better brand. So I guess I got to get the steering coupler back off this one, get my little black plastic piece off, and hopefully I can get a better one tomorrow. So this is the new rack that I just got today from my local parts house, and it's actually a ZF. It's a remanufactured. So they take the original core and they remanufacture it, which, you know, I guess what they basically ended up doing is replacing all the seals and all the O-rings inside and stuff, all the oil seals. But one thing I can tell they didn't do is they didn't replace the tie rod ends with super stiff ones. At least I don't think they did. So I hope that doesn't come back to bite me. But you know what? There's really nothing I can do about that right now. So we're using this one because this is a ZF original and it should fit. So let's go ahead and stick this in. Okay, let's get this one in here. And it fits. Yay. Very nice. Trick is we need this to slip in the proper distance here. Let's see, I don't know exactly where that is. It's about right there. Okay. Just gonna put this bolt up through it. You know, get the thread started. That way it's got the steering shaft located right where it needs to be. I'll come in and I'll tighten it later. And just get our bolts in. Get the wrench snaked over the top here on the nut. There we go. Give it 2 patented Erico Ugga-Duggas each, and it's tight. Oh, no such luck on that one. Get in here and tighten this up. Let's make sure it's just hand tight first. That way we don't have too much more to go. Feels good. So the other one had the boot off and we were able to kind of see where these lines go a little better, but now we can't. But you guys, you know what I'm doing. Let's see See, this one, the big one, oops, the big one went on the bottom, I believe. They're two different sizes, so you can't get them mixed up. Okay. So this one, I think I'll get the other line in, for the new line in first. So looks like I bought the wrong line. You can see here that this thing goes at this sort of an angle, and this one goes at that sort of an angle. Now I could swear to God, the one in the picture on eBay was this one with just this angle right here, and not this with the other right angle here. So yeah, I'll have to go confirm that and everything, but yeah, whatever. It's okay. It's not that big of a deal to change this line, but I guess I'm gonna have to put my old one back in, weeping though it may be, and just move on. Ooh, it's dripping. It may have been easier to put this line in first than that other line, because this one sort of goes behind it, the way that the line sort of snakes around. Yeah, I think it definitely would have been easier to do it that way. Not impossible though, to do it this way. I believe it was, the bottom one was a 22, is that right? Let's see, let's make sure. Yeah, it's kind of touching it. I don't want it to be touching it. Touching the top line, that is. We'll just kind of loosen it back up and kind of reposition it. It's really difficult not being able to see it. Okay. Okay, I do believe that is it. Now all we got to do is put the tie rods on. So this one was 18.5 turns, and if we wanted to end that way, I believe we wanted to start it this way. Gonna get this little collar on. The collar is gonna go this way. What is that? Some crap. So that collar kind of pinches on this way, so it goes on here like that. So that was the half. That's 1, 2, 3. That was 18. Okay. So we'll just get that sort of snug for right now. We'll tighten it up once we know where we're at. But we're gonna get that in. So put the lock nut back on. I'm sure we're supposed to replace it, but I don't have another one. So I'm just going to go do that for the other side, and then we'll put the tires on, and then we'll give it sort of a final by eye adjustment just to kind of make sure the tires are straight. We'll lock the lock nuts in, then we'll be good. I'll go get an alignment. So I've got the wheel in the straight ahead position. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this, but I think this tire is sticking out on the front a little bit, so it's a little bit too far this way. And I kind of think the same thing for that tire as well. So I think I'm going to make an adjustment. So to make that adjustment, you just back off this nut, which we didn't tighten anyway. And then we're just going to use a 13 mil wrench to wind the tie rod in or out. Okay. And that should get us our adjustment. Now, you see the boot is kind of messing up a little, so what we want to do is take off this clamp so that that can actually spin, and you guys are in the way, so I need to figure out how to do that. Yeah, okay, all I did really was slip a screwdriver kind of in between it. It's just, it's like a little plastic clip thing. It should be a metal thing, but it's good that they didn't do that. So 13 mil wrench, and we can actually wind this in or out, and that will adjust the tire. Yeah, so going this way, going clockwise, that's actually bringing the front of the tire in. And I'm just sort of eyeballing it. Just trying to use my best judgment here. It's actually kind of difficult with this particular car. What you're really, what you kind of should do is string up a string between two jack stands and just kind of, align the string right to the back wheel, and that string will then kind of tell you if the front wheel is straight or not relative to the back wheel. So I don't know, I'm just gonna get it by eye as best I can. Okay, I think I'll be happy with that. And I think I will leave this loose for the alignment guy so he can kind of, push it in. He can make it tight. So I'll just do the same on the other side. So that's kind of where we are now with our tire alignment. I think it's, I think it looks right. It might still be too far out this way. I really don't know, but it only has to be straight enough to get you down the road. So guys, this is what's known as a redneck alignment. I just wanted to show you. I've just obviously got my an extra jack stand just kind of set up there, lift it up. I got the string tied to it. It's kind of touching both edges of the rear tire, and then it runs all the way up to the front. Again, another jack stand. So these are basically, I have 6 jack stands going on here, 4 to lift up the car and then 2 more to do this. And what you kind of do is you just pull the string taut, and then you just kind of move it gingerly into place, and you can just kind of sight down along the string. And if the tire is too far out or in, you'll see that it contacts in the back or doesn't contact in the back, or contacts in the front. So you can just use that as your alignment gauge, and you can just sort of adjust your tire and get it perfect. I decided to set this up and show you after all, just to kind of get it as perfect as I could. This still doesn't substitute for an alignment, but when there's nothing else to, when you have really no other choice, this is the redneck alignment. This is, this will kind of get you by, but don't say I didn't warn you if you start to get tire wear if all you do is this, okay? All right, there should be enough in there now. Now I'm gonna turn it lock to lock. Okay. That actually worked out really well. Yeah, that level is actually perfect. That's it. That's as hard as it is. So that's it, guys. We're all done. No leaks, looks good. I'm just gonna go over to the alignment shop, make sure everything's perfect, and we're all done. So the lesson, the moral of this story is, just don't buy anything from eBay. I need to learn that. I'm making enough money now where I really don't have to do that. I honestly, I don't do that much anymore. I pretty much buy from this parts warehouse that I have like a buyer account with, but it's kind of difficult for me to get over there these days because I've got like a full-time job, and they're only open until 5:30. I get off at 5. It's like a half hour to get there. Like I wouldn't make it in time, They deliver during the day, but there's nobody here to accept it. Maybe I can have them deliver stuff with my next door neighbor. I don't know. I'll figure it out, But yeah, in the future, I'm just gonna avoid all that stuff and just buy from the parts warehouse, the local guys. They seem to have everything. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more. I'm the 50s Kid. Thanks a lot for watching.